Good morning, everybody. I am Kate Heald. I am the College and Career Navigator at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. We also have Jennifer Lyons on here, who is in the same role at Magruder. There's Jenny. Hi. I am recording this event. The recording will be placed on the workshop spreadsheet so that you can access it at your convenience. And I am joined today by Nicole White from Franklin University in Switzerland, John Wells from the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, and Kendall Hook from the University College Dublin in Ireland. So I am going to stop talking and the rest of you can introduce yourself.
I'll go first since you said my name. I'm Nicole. Yes, I am at Franklin University of Switzerland. We're in Lugano, Switzerland. Really excited to be here. Thanks, Kate. And then I'll hand it over to John.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm John Wells with the University of St. Andrews. I have been in Scotland. I've been with St. Andrews for about 5 years now, or close to six. I've worked in higher ed, though, for about 35 years, mostly in the study abroad field, and have probably at this point visited more than 150 universities abroad and probably over 500 in the US. So happy to talk broadly about systems and processes and things like that. So hand it to Kendall now. And then Kendall, maybe if you want to start kicking us off with something about the application process, if that makes sense.
Oh, sure. Um, I'm Kendall. I actually live in Nashville, Tennessee, but I work for University College Dublin. I primarily work with students in the Washington, D.C. area. I've been with UCD for about 6 years as well, but in the international education space for about 10 now. So we're happy to be here with you all today. And we each represent three very different types of institutions in three different countries with different application systems. So we're very happy to chat a little bit about the differences between the US application process and the education system in our respective countries. So you can see what is maybe similar to what you expect, but also where it will vary. So when it comes time for you to apply abroad, you aren't surprised and you have a good idea of what to expect. I guess first things first, I would say the biggest difference, at least for Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, as well as the UK, where we overlap, is that you often are applying directly to the subject areas that you're most interested in studying. So if you are interested in the arts, you apply into the arts. If you're interested in science, you apply directly into the sciences. And I think each of our respective institutions do have a varying degree of flexibility. But overall, it is not as flexible as here in the US, where you apply to a school generally, and then you pick your major in 2 years' time. So you're really cutting to the chase, at least for the UK and Ireland, and you don't have what's called general education requirements like here in the US. So I guess we can each talk a little bit about that more in depth, but that's probably like the biggest thing to kick us off and highlight is that you do have to have an idea of what you want to study as a generalization. However, we all know there's different styles of institutions abroad. We do have American styles of universities abroad that give you more resemblance to the US system. So we can all talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great lead off, Kendall. And really, St. Andrews falls kind of in the middle, I think, of the three institutions we have present today, in that Scotland is the one place in the UK that has a 4-year undergraduate degree and not 3, while students still apply to study a specific subject. So be that history or physics or geography, they apply for a specific subject or subjects. But in Scotland, in their first 2 years, they do 3 different subjects. And then anything they do in both year 1 and 2, they can do make their degree for years 3 and 4. So it kind of falls in between the US system and the rest of Europe's system. Really, about 40% of our students will earn a degree in something other than what they gained admission to study. The one group it doesn't work well for, though, is if you come to me and you say, I love both history and physics, I want to do both. I'm going to be, that's great. You're going to stay in the US or go to a US institution abroad, because European and overseas institutions, for the most part, aren't going to allow that kind of mix. I mean, St. Andrews has some. If you say philosophy and physics, that you can do. But generally, you're going to be in the sciences or you're going to be in the social sciences and humanities. Nicole, do you want to talk about how Franklin differs? Because I know it's a different kind of structure.
Sure. Yeah. So there is a different group called AUAs, so the American Universities Abroad. That would be schools like American University of Paris or American University of Rome. John Cabot. Is John Cabot one? Yes. No.
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
they are,
Yes,
right?
it is. Yep. Yep.
I'm tired today. It's almost Friday. American University of Greece. And so Franklin University of Switzerland falls in that same category where we are an American institution, but we are located in Lugano, Switzerland. So very much of what Kendall was talking about, at the very beginning where, you come in, we are a 4-year degree, just like it'd be in the States. We're on the Common App. You apply same time frame year, small enrollment fee, and then when you actually get to campus, you're able to meet with your academic advisor and pick your classes, and you can change your mind quite a few times. Most of our students don't know what they want to do, even though they say they know what they want to do, until end of sophomore year, would kind of be end of the second year, really figuring out what they want. So it does very much follow this same pathway as in the American institution. And then we also have quite a few, partners back in the States, because it's easy to transfer our credits and then right back, either study abroad or transfer students. It's quite easy to take those with you as well. So.
Yeah, I think it's worth it to talk a little bit about kind of the application process as well. As Nicole mentioned, they use Common App. In the case of St. Andrews, we use both Common App and the British system, UCAS. Do not preference one application system over another. And there are about, I think it's now 17 UK universities that do take the Common App. What's important to understand, now, Nicole, do you guys look at the personal statement and those aspects of the Common App?
We do. We
You
look at
do.
all that, but we
Yep.
are not, we don't require the test scores, but we
Yep.
look at the rest. Yeah.
Yep. So St. Andrews, while we take the Common App, we don't even read your personal statement. I usually say to students, we're not interested in what makes you unique or challenges you faced. We are reading an application to try to determine, are you academically able to succeed, and is your academic interest aligned with our curriculum? So in our case, if you use Common App, we have a supplemental statement where we basically ask, why do you want to study the subject you're applying for, and why is St. Andrews the right place for you to do that? Students using UCAS will find that there are 3 prompts or questions around the same kind of thing. So it's all about, are you academically eligible and a good academic fit? Kendall, do you want to talk a bit about UCD's approach to that?
Yes. So UCD specifically, we are a very objective admissions process solely based on standardized test scores and GPA. The exception being our clinical programs. We do have veterinary medicine and medicine starting at the undergrad level, and that admissions process does look more like the US process, where you have to submit letters of recommendation, your resume, interview, etc. But everything else, non-clinical at UCD, is very objective. So you don't necessarily have to have test scores for every program for admission, but in all cases, for us, it does not hurt you. It can only help you. And that's what we use for admissions. And just generalizing across the Republic of Ireland, standardized test scores and grades are still going to be the most important part of admissions. You may come across a school that does have some sort of personal statement or essay. It's still not going to be as extensive as the US, but those personal statements might resemble more the statements that you might find on a UK application where they're asking, why do you want to study this subject at our school? So some Irish schools may have essays, some might not, but overall, your academics, your standardized test scores, your GPA are going to be the most important.
Yeah, and St. Andrews, and I should say more broadly, in the UK, most of the institutions, particularly those in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, where it's a 3-year degree, they have pretty strict requirements about the number of APs and the scores you receive on those APs. Many want 5 to 7 or so APs. St. Andrews and most of the Scottish universities tend to be a little bit more flexible since we're a 4-year and not 3-year degree. So we say 3 to 5 APs. Students wanting to do lab sciences, so biology, chemistry, physics, we are going to be more specific there and looking at students who have at least 2 APs in lab sciences. And when I say lab science, that does not include in our definition environmental science. So I'm talking about chemistry, biology, and physics, really. So we're going to look for that. We're going to look for Calc BC or the equivalent and those kinds of requirements. Students wanting to go into social science, humanities, it's much broader about what specific subjects you need to have taken. So if you want to study even economics with us, you do not have to take AP economics. Actually, in the economics case, we're going to look for a little bit around math more than that. But in general, what's happening is students in Europe start to specialize in their last 2 years of high school. So they're a bit ahead of US students. And that's why we're looking for students who have undertaken APs generally. We are test optional and tend to be quite explicit, as most UK universities are, about what test scores we expect to see. In our case, 1420 or higher on the SAT, 31 or higher on the ACT, submit. If not, do not. So we don't talk about kind of a mid-range or anything like that. We just say these scores submit. If not, do not. And about half of our US students do not submit test scores. But again, St. Andrews is a bit of an outlier there. A lot more UK universities are going to look for standardized test scores.
To piggyback off of that, the Republic of Ireland, I mentioned that test scores are the most important, but overall, the types of AP scores that you submit, there is a bit more flexibility, similar to St. Andrews, more flexibility than, say, England on the types of AP scores you submit. But there will be subject requirements depending on the program you're most interested in. We just have flexibility on the ways you can meet those subject requirements, whether that's math competency or a lab science competency. It doesn't necessarily have to be an AP. So there's a degree of flexibility there. But overall, I think it's really nice that admissions requirements for European universities are often much more publicly available and transparent than admissions here in the US. Here in the US, I think it's so subjective and you just really have no idea, whereas a lot of universities abroad are very transparent about their application requirements. So you should have a much, at least better idea of where you stand before you go into the application process.
Can I say one thing? For us, we are not at all like that. So for
Yeah, it's very
AP
different.
and IB
Hmm.
classes, just so you know, in case you're not someone who has a ton of AP classes and IB courses, if you do, we will look at that for giving you credit for it towards, your 4-year degree. If the grade is high enough, that's absolutely a possibility for us. What we're looking for is a type of person. So we're very much looking for someone who is open-minded, wouldn't request to be sharing a room with another American student, someone who wants to be living with people from over, 30, 40 countries. And so the typical student that does well at Franklin is maybe somebody who um, is kind of, after that wanderlust and is just looking to explore and get out there because we do go to a different country every semester with your class. And so for us, it's less about the grades and more about the person. And I can normally tell within 10 to 15 minutes, as I'm sure Kendall and John can, if you would be okay, moving far away and going to school. And so definitely reach out and talk to one of us if it's something, so we can just get an idea if you would succeed. I think it's not easy going far away, but there's a great community at all these different schools ready to support you.
Nicole, so because your style of institution is very different than St. Andrews and UCD, or really any other school in the Republic of Ireland, just for the students who joined late, can you explain how you guys are different and like the network of American style of
Yeah. Oh,
institutions
yeah,
that
I
are in Europe?
Yeah, so there's quite a small list. We're all on this. I'm sure, Kate has it, the ERNA list of all the counselors of all the international schools, but they're called AUA, so American Universities Abroad. And it really is just the American curriculum, but existing internationally. So we've got American University of Paris and American University of Rome, which are both lovely. Keep in mind for schools abroad with us, housing isn't always guaranteed everywhere. So make sure that that's something that you write down and ask a lot of good questions about when you get to that point. Obviously Franklin, Switzerland, we are American school based in Lugano, Italy, Lugano, Switzerland, which is right there on the border of Italy. American University of Greece, John Cabot, which I believe is in Rome as well. I think I'm missing some. I'm sure John John knows all the schools. But yeah, so we do have, if you're kind of wanting a soft landing, like you're not ready to jump completely into a completely different world. I lived in London for a while and was very surprised how different the education system is compared to the US. Some people know exactly what they want to do, and it's fantastic. The UCLs and LSEs and all those kind of really good schools. But for those who are like, I want the American school system, I'm not sure, I might just want to go for a year or transfer or go for a semester, we make it really easy for you to do that. So, yes. Um,
I
Paris, yeah.
think I think another important thing, I know there was a question about kind of timelines and how that all fits on the application process. There was
Mhm.
the impression that overseas universities don't make decisions as quickly. I can speak to St. Andrews. In fact, we're rolling admissions,
Okay.
and our admissions open up when Common App and UCAS open up, so in early August. We will start usually making offers in mid to late October or so. So normally it's about a 4 to 6 week turnaround time. So that's another thing you want to ask schools you're interested in about the timeline and the process. In the case of St. Andrews, for our more competitive subjects like economics and international relations, applying early is really important, because a student who applies early, we may look and say, yep, meets the criteria. We will make them an offer. We use the term, we make you an offer. We don't accept you. And then you accept the offer from us in our terminology. So a student who applies early may receive an offer. And if that exact same application comes in the middle of December, they may not receive an offer anymore because we don't have enough places left. So that's another important one to talk to schools that you're interested in about what is their timeline and what is their process overall.
Yeah, we're the same. We are on the Common App as well. So we open when the Common App does. And we recommend our US students apply by December 1st. For us, that's not binding or anything. That's just operating off of a normal US timeline, ensuring that there is capacity in the programs you're interested in. And then there's some scholarship opportunities to apply for in the spring. So a lot of schools do operate off of a very similar timeline to the United States, but again, as John mentioned, it is something to ask each individual school, because there are other schools in the UK who might give decisions in the summertime, which came up in the chat.
I just want to add to that, something that's happening currently to me is that the May 1st US big day, right, where everyone decides where they're going here. I've had students not get their top choice and then come to me, in May and say, hey, you offered me a spot in April and I hadn't made my decision yet. Can I still come? Yeah, okay. It's not, we still allow, if we have spots up until last minute, it's the student visa. And I think Dublin, I don't know if you don't need a visa, right?
Well, this is something that that we got a question about in the chat. So if we each could go
perfect. Yes.
with
Okay.
our countries.
I just wanted to bring up the timeline and the visa, because I think that's an important one.
Next we can talk about visas and getting
how that works. How it works. I'll go just for us. So the Swiss, they're very particular. Apparently just found out right before this call that we're switching to an e-visa system, which is going to be great, but it's all going to change next year. So I don't know exactly how that's going to work. But we need about 6 to 8 weeks turnaround time for the visa. So it's more timeline around getting your student visa and making sure that your arrival into Switzerland goes smoothly. So we are also on rolling admissions, but and everyone has a different visa situation depending on where you're from. So that's all for me.
Yeah. So the UK, that visa process has become much more electronic now. So students, once they have accepted their places, in our case, paid a deposit, they will be issued what is called a UCAS number by the university. That is what they use to apply for a visa. Probably we may have some here, because I run across them all the time in DC, of people who have dual citizenship. A reminder, for the UK, having EU citizenship gets you absolutely nothing any longer. It is the same as US from our perspective. The second thing I will emphasize is, while you may be a dual citizen with the UK, that does not qualify you for UK tuition levels. It is residency, not citizenship, that is the determining factor about tuition levels. The Canadians are the one exception I know to that one. The Canadians are particularly generous on that front. But the process, we give you all the information. Honestly, 99.5% of our students get one, no problem. Usually once they do the biometric, it's within a couple of weeks that they receive it. It's that first lesson for students about, you need to just follow instructions and don't procrastinate on it. That's what we emphasize. Those are the only students who get themselves into trouble kind of with the process. Your student visa then will permit you to work part-time when school's in session, anywhere you want, full-time during any breaks. And at the completion of your degree, you are permitted to work anywhere you would like in the UK for 18 months. So Kendall, if you want to explain Ireland.
Ireland is similar to the UK in the fact that your fee status is dependent on residency, not passport. So you have to have lived in the EU for the last 3 to 5 years, or done at least 5 years of school in the EU and currently the UK to qualify for EU fees. So it is not just based on being a dual citizen. If you are just a U.S. citizen, that is totally fine as well. The visa process is quite a bit easier. You don't have to do anything before you arrive. You actually apply for your permissions to stay after you arrive within 90 days. You cannot even make the appointment until you get to Ireland. So there's really nothing to do as a U.S. passport holder except get documents in order. If you're a passport holder or citizen of a country other than the U.S. or Canada, you might have to apply for a visa, in which we would defer to our immigration office on campus. But in terms of U.S. passport holders, there's nothing to do until you get there. If you graduate with a degree from the Republic of Ireland, you can, at the undergrad level, you can stay back for up to 1 year without needing any visa sponsorship from a country to stay and look for employment and work. And then at the master's level, you can stay back for up to 2 without any additional employer visa sponsorship. So that's nice if you want some time to stay back and look for a role. Yeah, Nicole, you already covered yours.
And the bearer of bad news, Switzerland, they kick you out as soon as you're done. You're not allowed to work. It's a very small country. I don't think anybody realizes that Switzerland fits into the state of Texas 16 times. It's a very, very small, and they are less inclined to let people work and stay. It's just there's oversaturation of people living there. You can do like a scholarship program and work within the school while you're with us. I saw someone, Maximilian, ask a question. If you have an EU passport, the Swiss have a Schengen agreement, you get half off tuition at our institution, and you do not need a visa. So you get half the fees, and yeah, you don't have to do anything extra. You do have to do a background check just to prove that everything's kosher with where you are coming from. But yeah, so you don't have to do anything. You just get half off tuition, and then of course you're allowed to work. But that is it for me.
To follow what Nicole said, looking at the chat, I forgot to mention there is a process when you arrive in Ireland if you're a U.S. passport holder. And although a UK or EU passport does not change your fee status in Ireland, if you do hold one of those passports and you come in and out of the country on that passport, then you don't even need to tell Ireland that you're there. So you just don't have to go through that immigration appointment like you would if you only possessed a U.S. passport. Next, I think we can talk about housing and how housing differs between our countries, but also just generally how it differs between the U.S. and abroad. And just the cost of attendance and how it's different from the U.S.
The exchange rate, if you can talk about the exchange rate, because I'm Canadian. If I go to Canada, I have a great exchange rate. If I go to Europe, it's not so much the same. So
yes, I can start with the Republic of Ireland. One, I would say this is pretty common across Europe, is that our housing on campus, you don't share a room with anyone. They are single style dormitories. So you do share common spaces with other students, kind of like a suite that you might find here in the US. But you don't usually normally share a sleep space with another student. So you'd have your own bedroom, sometimes own bathroom, depending on your price point and what you choose. And then you share a kitchenette and a living area with a group of students. That's a generalization across Europe. We do have those options on campus. Some universities have university-owned housing, but it's off campus. So that really depends on the institution. It's very common for European students to cook for themselves. So tying into where you're living and what that's like and the differences, that is a big one as well. So you're not going to find meal plans, everywhere like you do here in the U.S. But that's certainly a great skill that you will learn, and will learn very quickly. I think you'd find that you start to enjoy it, and it tends to be a more economical option as well, as opposed to paying for a full meal plan here in the U.S. that you may or may not use. Groceries tend to be less expensive abroad. In terms of cost, and the exchange rate, it's not the best for the US dollar to euro right now, but that fluctuates. So, speaking for UCD, that would be checking with your bank at the time you pay. But for some countries, that means your tuition can be a lot less expensive than the US, and sometimes it means that it could be a little bit more expensive than the US, but it all depends on the style of institution. And overall, I would say many European schools are a little bit less expensive than paying out-of-state tuition or private school tuition here in the US.
Yeah, what I would say about this is St. Andrews, in terms of accommodation, you're guaranteed a space in a university residence hall your first year as an international student. I think UCD is the same thing, correct, Kendall?
Yes, for your first year.
Almost all of the UK universities I know of will guarantee a place for the first year. But the majority of students after their first year at a lot of UK universities, and this is the case with St. Andrews as well, move into private accommodation after their first year. St. Andrews is a bit of an outlier in that Kendall's absolutely right. The Europeans think it's bizarre to share a room. They don't quite understand the logic behind that. St. Andrews does have quite a few shared rooms, however. We're a 600-year-old university. You will not be in a 600-year-old residence hall. We don't have any that old, but we do have them that are a couple hundred years old and look like they're out of Hogwarts. So if that's the kind of thing you're looking for, you can have that. Those often are shared rooms with a bathroom down the hall, and most of those are catered. So you do have a meal plan. The big difference is we have no university-wide dining hall. And there's a lot of UK universities that function this way. You may hear some of them talk about the college system. Cambridge, Oxford, Durham, York, I believe, a few others use the college system, where students are affiliated with a college. That is not an educational part. That is more of the residential part of things. St. Andrews does not have a college system, but students are in those residence halls. They eat just with the other students who live in their residence halls. If you are not on a meal plan, you have access to kitchens, and you may go to cafes in town or the student union to eat, but there is no kind of subsidized. And even if you're on a meal plan, there aren't places to go where you can use some kind of card like you do at US universities to be able to get a pizza or something from a fast food place. If you're on a meal plan, it's in that dining hall when that's open. So it's a little bit more restricted overall. In terms of costs, St. Andrews is one of the more expensive universities in the UK. We're one of the more selective, one of the more prestigious. Our tuition is £32,000 a year, so about $40,000. What I will emphasize here is that 95% of our US students pay that full amount. So we do not provide many merit-based and really don't have a system for need-based scholarships. I think others do a little bit, but still you will find that students, for the most part, are paying closer to that full tuition cost. Now, the real difference is none of us are charging $70,000 to $80,000 a year in tuition either. So it's a much more, again, like the application process, I would say it is a much more transparent system as well, that we're pretty clear about what the costs are.
And I think just as an example, if my page loads, as an example of how I said that a lot of European universities can fall in that mid-range, like maybe more affordable than out-of-state or private school tuition. An example, I believe that like University of Maryland, including room and board, if you were to live on campus, and tuition is still in the 30s without scholarships. But for Maryland, out of state's in the 50s, which I think you can probably extrapolate to like a Virginia Tech or, something like that. For UCD, we're in the 40s, including living on campus. So it does kind of fall in that mid-range and can provide some students, that middle ground. And many universities abroad can accept U.S. federal loans through FAFSA as well. Nicole, what about Switzerland?
Yeah, so we are on the higher end of you guys. Switzerland is first off, I'll go with housing. So we have we have something for everyone. So if you want to live alone, we have those. If you want to live, with others, we do encourage our freshmen to live. You can have your own room, but living in one of those kind of suite styles that Kendall was talking about. We really want you to cook together. We really want you to have meals together and spend time together with people from other parts of the world. We do have meal plans. Freshmen are required to have a meal plan. I always tell you to get the cheapest one because the food is really good, but most of the time you're going to want to make food. And a lot of our students just go over to Italy and the groceries are like half the price and they just stock up and then they, noodles and all the normal college food. They don't normally want to eat at the times that the dining hall is open and things like that. So we do have all of those options depending on price point and comfort level. And then we do have an accommodations team if there's any sort of religious meal prep or any sort of thing like that we take into consideration and who you're living with and that sort of thing, which I'm sure you guys have as well. As far as funding goes and exchange rate, we have U.S. tuition price, so you pay in U.S. dollars if you're living in the States. It's everything all in. It's 48,500. We do have a very generous alumni donor pool of money that we give each year. I don't think I've had anyone actually ever pay the full price of tuition, if I'm being honest. You can get up to 20,000 off per year if you have a 4.0 GPA. And it's on our website, 4.0, 20,000, 3.8, 18,000. So it goes down, so on and so forth, based on a really generous alumni. And then, like I said before, if you're an EU or Swiss passport holder, it's half that price to attend. So it's very different depending on which school you look at. But I worked at Duke previously and UNC previously, and hearing some of these costs rising in the US of some of these schools, it blows my mind. Just the number attached to each year, whether it's in state or out of state, even here in the States. So very affordable to go overseas. What was next or did I talked about housing, funding. I think that was it. And you can use FAFSA obviously as well, because we do have need-based scholarships too, and like awards, like leadership awards and things like that, that you can add on.
If I can add one more area here beyond the finance part, and that is at least I think for the European universities, not so much for American universities abroad, but I always emphasize to students they want to think about the kind of learner they are and whether they fit well in the systems or not. I characterize students going to St. Andrews as the ones who like to go down the rabbit hole. That you're not going to be told by professors, everybody read chapter 39 for your next class. In your first 2 years, you'll have large lectures at St. Andrews. This is our structure, followed by small tutorials of 15 to 20 students. Lectures, you're just going to go and listen to what the professor says. Tutorials, you're going to discuss that topic. In the lecture, the professor may cite an article or two, and you think, okay, I better read that, but they're never going to say everybody needs to read this for the tutorial. So your 20 students in a tutorial may have read 10 different things about that topic. This also means that our courses in year 1 and 2 are some of the most boring looking anywhere. Really, really broad titles and surveys. That doesn't mean everybody has to just do that basic part, though. You're allowed to pursue your own interest and passion within that subject from the very start. So it's important to think about the kind of learner you are. And if you're somebody who needs a lot of structure, needs to know what's expected of you, some of the American universities abroad might be a better option. If you're somebody who's very confident, likes the freedom to follow what they want, European universities can be a good option for you. So give some thought to that as well.
I don't have much to add because we operate in a very similar style as
I can
well.
speak to us. So we do not have lectures. Our class sizes are probably, we have a very small school. I guess I'd say I don't even know the numbers of students you guys have at yours too, but we have 500 students total at Franklin. So we're very small. So the class sizes might be 10 to 15 students. Those are going to look like I sat in on a couple. Hey, everybody, get in a circle. We're going to talk about everything from all of your different countries' perspectives, and it's very discussion based. They don't have, the American style, which I was surprised of, tests and quizzes and all these types of things that we have here. It's very just kind of talking. They might have a midterm and a final, but it's about more experiencing things and walking outside the classroom. It's just a completely different, good academics, but a lot more discussion-led, discussion-based learning with the professor. And our professors are from 42 different places around the world. So they're just all about the international aspect to everything. And so a lot different. I would say wouldn't need to be as like, I'm not a great test taker. So this would, Franklin would be a great school for me. I would need more of that telling you what to do type of thing. I do not think that I would succeed well at St. Andrews, but I do know it is an amazing school. So yeah, I think it is important. That's a great point, John, to really think about what kind of learner you are, because it's really going to help. And we would all be very honest, or you can talk to current students or alumni of our schools as well.
Yeah,
Does anybody, oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, one other thing I would add is thinking about what kind of student life and interaction you want there. St. Andrews is kind of unique in that we are a 10,000 student university. So by UK standards, we are actually considered small, mid-sized by US standards, but we're in a town of only 20,000 people. That means it's a really close-knit community. 90% or more of our students that are studying at St. Andrews live there. Yet it's a very international, 40% international. These are the kind of things you want to look at and think about. If you're studying in Edinburgh, it's going to be a very different experience because a lot of the students come to class and then they scatter every direction possible. So it's harder to get a sense of where is that community. I think, but what makes also St. Andrews is unique is we don't have a campus, we just have a town. Because of our age and things. And Kendall, I think UCD offers more of that campus experience overall.
Yeah, I'd say our campus feels very familiar to a US style of campus. We're one of the oldest universities in Ireland, but we moved to our physical location in Dublin in the 60s. So like everything feels, mid-century modern forward. And it feels very similar to a large public research institution where, we have a consolidated campus with main entry points, and it's a matter of maybe it's like 2.5 miles to downtown area. So we're considered an urban campus because we're in Dublin, but it feels more similar to like a suburban style of U.S. institution?
Mine is surrounded by like vineyards, and you'll be walking through the actual Serengo, which is like a little suburb of Lugano. You walk from one end of the campus through neighborhoods, through like there'll be, the kids in Switzerland go home for lunch each day. So you might be walking along little kids wearing school uniforms, walking along the street. When you look out, you're looking at Lake Lugano, and the Swiss Alps. It is very small villagey feel, very, very safe. Obviously, Switzerland's very safe, but we do have a larger, would you call like a bigger state school, as I would say, down the road called Uzi. And then we have TASIS, which is a very well-known American boarding school, that's in Lugano as well. So there does have a more of a college younger vibe in Lugano, but Lugano has palm trees. So when you think of Switzerland, you don't typically think of, but it's the Italian part of Switzerland. So everyone's speaking in Italian. So it's more of a tourist destination for those living in the northern part of Switzerland to come down. So it's a little bit different, but
Yeah, I would say overall, just like with US universities, you're going to find something that matches you well there, whether it's suburban, campus-based, urban, small, large. There's a wide mix of things. So explore the different opportunities. Talk to us. I think all of us also are happy to talk to students, and we'll all tell you, listen, given your interests, either academic or the kind of environment you want to be in, we may not be the right choice, but maybe here's some other ones that would be a good fit for you.
and we all know each other well, and we are learning. I've sent people to John's state, to John. I think everyone's sending, oh, I think there's a really great program for that in Rome, and so don't be afraid to ask us, and we are happy to point you in the right direction. If you just describe, it's easier if you know what you want, but it's also easy to just kind of talk about what you don't like. So yeah.
Do you mind putting each of you, can you put your email in the chat if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And to those of you out there, do any of you have questions that you want to put in the chat before we finish? I know we have a couple CCNs on here. Are there any questions that you have about studying internationally?
Yes, do you have scholarships for us so we can study internationally?
I know, right?
We have 1-year master's degrees that are great deals that make you eligible then to stay and work in the country for 18 months after. I wish I would have known at one point.
Oh, heavens. I may be emailing you.
Yeah, I know. You're never too old to go back for another degree. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Well, as always, this has been incredibly informative. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording. Again, as I